Hi, Twitch. This is SP from Better Podcasting, which is a podcast for the hobby podcaster. I'm also on the GonnaGeek.com podcast network. What I've been doing here is I've been live streaming walkthroughs of my edits, particularly of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I also do another podcast called Starling Tribune, and one of my viewers here, Jonesy, sent in a question of how do plugins actually work with Audacity. And I want to show you because what I do for Starling Tribune is I actually gather up my recordings. I do some pre-processing for them to make it easier for my virtual assistant or the virtual assistant for the podcast. And then I send the files off to her. So what I do is I bring the files into Audacity. I run the DE-Clicker, Rx5 DE-Clicker, and I then transform the file or render it as a FLAC file, which is a lossless type of file, and then I send it off to her. So I'm going to run you through that process really quick of one of the files. Now, this was the Starling Tribune that I just recorded today. This is the 8th of November, 2018, so it's Starling Tribune number 217, and I have three files. This is me. This is the incoming audio from the Google Hangouts or the YouTube Live that we recorded, which is basically Chris and Michelle combined on one track. And then this is the track that I have all of my soundboards on, the intro, the outro, any sound effects that are used during the podcast. And able to do this because I have a mixer board. I have a Mackie Pro FX 16V2, and all of these inputs are headed into there. And then I use the many outputs from that board to go into a Zoom H6 hardware recorder. So all this audio was actually recorded on a Zoom H6, track 1, track 2, and track 4. So let's go ahead and open up just one of these. Let's go with track 1. And track 1 is me. So you will see me talking. I don't know, roughly about half the time. I'm kind of the lead host for bringing the show in and show out, but there is another host, Michelle, that takes lead of the discussion of the actual episode and of the news. So you do see me in there probably about 50% of the time. So we start recording before the podcast and then we keep going until afterwards. In this particular case, the actual podcast recording was around 50 minutes, but there's some pre and post that we threw in there as well. This is us ending the show. I can just tell you that right there. And then we did do, this was unusual. We did a post credits recording that we will try to roll into the main podcast when it actually is published, because it was something that we didn't forget to talk about. It just came up as we were ending the show, and I thought, hey, let's go ahead and do that afterwards. So I already know that. And I'm guessing right around here is the intro. So that gives you a sense of, and that might not be it. And you know what? A good way to do this is actually call up the track number 4. And I can actually copy this. So I'm going to double click it and I'm going to Control C. So I'm going to select it all. And I'm going to go over to the first track here. I'm going to create a new track, which is Control Shift N. And I'm going to paste it as soon as I take the sync lock off. There you go. Now we can see where we start and where we end. I was right about the end. I was not right about the start. So that's it. And then we transition to news right here. So it gives you a sense of what's going on in the track. So I'm going to double click this part of the track because I'm going to do the light processing before I start. I do the DE-Click, select it on random, and then click, and then press OK. Now, Audacity is a destructive editor, which means that once this is complete, I have now changed the waveform, and the only way to go back is to undo. And as you make more and more changes to the file, the harder it is to get back to that point where you want to undo. And in fact, if you go to a certain point, you save the file, and then you start again another day, you close the file, you close Audacity, maybe shut the computer off, then you turn the computer back on, you reopen the file, and then you start again. you can't go back to anything that you've already done. Once you save the file, that's it. It is what it is, and you've now created a new file starting at that point. So that is why Audacity as a destructive editor might not be the best choice for you if you want to go back. Now, the editor that I have open right now, like a movie studio here, and this is the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. edit that I'm in the middle of right now. Let's just go to my track, for example, and we'll go to the track FX, and we'll see that same declicker that's right here. So instead of doing it before I do anything, I will turn this on as a final render. Everything else is actually working at the time that I am viewing it, and then it will be applied during the final render as well. So that's how the effects work in a non-destructive editor, where I can go back and change those effects, and it won't change anything in the original file. Now, what does change in the original file is when I take stuff out, like there. I can't go back to that. That is also an undo. And one thing you can do to get around that, say, whatever this is that Lauren is talking about right here, I want to take that out, but I want to leave it there so I can go back and get it later. And I've actually covered this in a previous video. So I split the track right there, and then I take the volume. I think I moved something right there. And I take the volume and I slide that down. Oh, yes, I did. And I slide that down to nothing. And then whatever is there, there's a couple little bumps there. I don't know if you could see them or not, is just gone. And it won't be, it's silenced basically, and it won't be in the final render. I'm going to bring that back up. I'm pretty sure I already looked at that. That's something that I actually want to keep, but that is how I would deal with it. And I would be able to go back and bring it back in at some point. So that's a non-destructive editor. We'll go back to Audacity here, and we see that I've got about 3 minutes left. And this is the other problem with a destructive editor, is once you run the render, you have to sit there and wait until you can run another effect. Now, I could change this all at the very end, but the whole point of editing the way I do from front to back is to be able to go in, listen to the file as I'm going, and make sure it sounds like I want it to sound at the end of the rendering and editing process. So you got to wait for these effects to run. Could be truncate silence, could be a noise gate, could be this, the declicker. It could be anything. If you want to EQ part of the track, you want to take out the bass, you want to add bass, you want to add in some high or accentuate high, basically, or you want to take it out. Or say you have sibilance in your S's like I do. This is something that you might want to de-emphasize equalization of certain bands so that the S's aren't as pronounced. And as I showed in a previous edit, if you want to get rid of plosives, that sort of thing, you can go in and select that portion of the waveform and then get rid of anything below, what is it, 200 kilohertz or something like that. And then that's just all gone. And I can't actually bring it up because it's rendering right now. Otherwise, I'd bring up the EQ. But I did cover that in a previous video, which should be on YouTube by now. And as you can tell, we still got about a minute left here. I actually run the declicker twice. I run it via click, and then I run it via, and it's both random, by the way, random click and then random discontinuity. And that's really why I'm running the declicker anyway, because between speech patterns and microphone etiquette and the actual recording apparatus, sometimes the waveform isn't as smooth as it is for somebody that's talking to you live. And this will go in and it'll take out those discontinuities, those little jumps in the audio waveform track, and it will smooth them out, and it will be like that little tick, that artificial break, and it sounds like a tick, of the waveform doesn't exist. But I'm going to forego the second render for the purposes of this instruction. and I'm just going to go to how I would render it as a FLAC. And it'll be a lot quicker than this render of DE-Click here, because it's only rendering as a lossless file. It's not actually going in and changing anything. So for that, I would go to File, Export Audio. We'll do that because that's what this is, version 2. And I label it as ST217 just to tell me what podcast I actually did. In the screen there, you can see files from 216 and 214. Fun fact, I was not on Starling Tribune 215 because I had something else going on that night. So this is then how I save it as a render. You can change that in here, by the way. If you choose the wrong export as, you can go by WAV file. The reason we use FLAC over WAV is that for transporting back and forth is that it's smaller. Like a WAV for this file would be somewhere in the 300 to 500 megabit. Is it megabit? Yeah, megabit range. A FLAC file will be in the 170-ish range for this length and the amount of talking that's done throughout the track. So we usually use FLAC files. It just makes the file transfer go a heck of a lot quicker. So now I'm going to render it. The rendering for them both is about the same. And this is your chance to edit metadata or the ID3 tags. I never do this here because I've got the tag and rename, which I think I showed in a previous file too. As you can see, we're talking 15 seconds for an hour-long recording here. It's not too shabby. And we're almost done. And bingo, I now have a lossless version of this that's not a WAV file that I can send to my virtual assistant so she can go ahead and edit Starling Tribune audio for us. So if you have any questions about how effects run in Audacity or Movie Studio for that matter, please let me know and I will go ahead and answer your question or maybe perhaps make another video just like this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.